Good afternoon or good evening, wherever you may be listening to us from here on this big, beautiful planet we call Earth. This is Michael Cross here with another edition of Unlock the Door Radio here on Usaway TV Productions, where we like to investigate the real news, not the fake stuff and the innuendo stuff that you get in much of the mainstream media today. Now, before I begin, I encourage people that if you're listening to this on YouTube or other platforms later, then please subscribe to this channel so you can keep up on future shows. Also, if you like dystopian science fiction that explores where we are heading today based on maybe where we were in our very, very, very ancient past, then check out my novel, The Destiny of Our Past. And you can just follow that title, The Destiny of Our Past, on Amazon and search it out. So, anyway, what I would like to do, and I think I'm going to title this later, is deal with the concept of guilt and self-doubt. So I'm going to title it, Dare to Take the Steps to Beating Self-Doubt and Guilt. Now, why, I don't want this to be one of those kind of self-help type videos that are out there on the internet. The fluffy, just believe in yourself and you can do anything, or some sort of new age thing that says, if I just have my ego say that this will happen, then it will happen without me doing something about it. So it's not like that. So be warned, and you might actually enjoy this a little bit more if you know how the topic is going to proceed. But what I first wanted to note, and I'll come back to this concept later, is there's two types of people who do not have that much self-doubt and guilt. Okay, doesn't necessarily mean that they believe they can do anything, okay? And there may be things that even scare them when it comes to accomplishing something. But psychopaths and narcissists tend to be much more able to explore and to jump out there and try new things and to take risks than regular people. And I think it is because they minimize the amount of self-doubts that they have. Usually their self-doubts don't even exist. Their fears are less overall than the general population. And their guilt is negligible at best. Okay, that's one area that they excel in, is a lack of guilt. But let me get back to this as I explore this in detail. What I want to point out is the Freudian concept of guilt. And then I'm going to talk about Jung, and then I'm going to go into this in more detail later. And that is, Freud believed this. Freud believed that guilt was a manifestation of the morality and expectations that were placed on you when you were a child by your parents. And how that worked was this. You are told what to do and what not to do by mom, maybe mom and dad. And what happens is you internalize these things. And as time goes on, you forget what the source was. All right, for the right and wrong. It's just you have a vague idea, well, this is what I've been taught during my life. But you don't remember mom saying, well, you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that. And when that gets internalized, and then you either do the thing that you're not supposed to do, or you think about doing the thing that you're not supposed to do, it comes back and smacks you in the face. And then that's where you feel guilt. It's like when you're training a dog. I mean, ultimately what you're doing is rewarding it for doing what it should do, which is actually contrary to its instincts. Okay? If you reward it for not lunging at strangers when you take it for a walk, for not running off, for not tearing up things in the house. Well, I mean, its natural instinct is to do those things. But instead, you reward it to get the good behavior and you show negativity when it does the bad behavior, which you don't want it to do. So you train it. And your hope is it will internalize these things. And it won't remember why it doesn't go to the bathroom in your house, but will hold it until it just cannot hold it anymore, until you take it out on the leash and let it use the bathroom. Humans are no different. Okay? We're more complex, obviously. We can interact with the teachings that we received. But at the same time, we still have internalized these kinds of things that say, you will not do this. Good kids don't do this. Then it turns into good adults don't do this. And then, of course, those things are manipulated by governments, advertisers, and so forth to get you to do things that you shouldn't do if you're looking at your own best interest, but they manipulate you into doing things that are bad. And often these are like psychopathic people that are in charge, and they're relying on the fact that you have a high level of empathy and guilt they can use together to get you to do something or feel bad for not doing it. Okay? I mean, think of all the young men in World War I and World War II marching off to battle. And, they're obviously not doing something that's in their own best interest, but, the society says this is your duty, you should do this. You have to prove how much you care about England or whatever. And many of them never marched back. So the thing is that guilt is not something you're born with. You're born with the capability of feeling guilt, but you're not born with guilt. Okay? The whole concept of original sin, I mean, never understood how that ever developed in old Christendom, because it doesn't conform to the Bible. But anyway, guilt itself is something that grows in most people, and what it is an internalization of the things you've been taught. Now, self-doubts work the same way. Okay? If your parents have said, no, you can't do that. That's not something that you're able to do. Now, sometimes they may say, well, you shouldn't jump off this bridge because you might not survive. But often there's other messages that, well, some people get rich, we can't. No one in our family's rich. Why go to school? Because none of our family has ever made it in education. Why try to be in shape? It's not in our genes. We're just not the kind of people who are going to look like those people you see on TV. And unfortunately for most people, self-doubts can be as strong and interwoven within your subconscious as guilt is. In fact, actually, they work together according to Freud, because Freud's view is that your ego is getting messages from the superego, the part that says, thou shalt do this or thou shalt not do that. And that will affect the capabilities of that person. No, it also affect their psychology too, and whether they will become neurotic or experience other mental disorders. But ultimately, the idea is that the superego, which is where all the rules are and all the expectations, will then beat up on the ego, especially if the id, which I'm going to get to in a moment, the id, which is all the instincts and drives and, those animal instincts that you try to train out of your dog. Those are in competition, and when in competition, the ego has to make sense of this, and often, or more often than not, actually, the superego will win over. And the superego is the seat of where guilt and self-doubts lie. Okay, I guess you could say the id, the part that's, the part that wants adventure and all those animal type things, it's a little bit more likely to express itself as a brave and courageous and willing to take risk. So most of the time people get that mixed up. I would actually say that those feelings of compassion that you feel for others is actually based in the id and not the superego, because the superego, like I said before, people that are manipulated to do evil are usually highly empathetic people. And so the superego overrides, obviously, parts of you that say, no, this is a human being. I can't do that. When you go off to train in the military, that it's not that they're training you to be more physically fit. They're training you to become part of a unit and to extend your ego over to the unit. And if the unit is told, march over there and kill those soldiers, then you will do that. Now, you may feel guilty for doing it afterward, but for that time being, you no longer feel that you're going to do things that normally you would never consider doing. And it may be totally morally repulsive. You may have been raised a really good Christian and believe that, thou shalt not kill, but then you're ordered by your commander. Okay, we don't have enough food for these prisoners, so let's go ahead and kill them, and we'll just, say that it was part of a battle. And you don't think that happened in World War II, or World War I for that matter, but especially World War II? Look at your history, okay? And I think all sides did it, including the United States. So the thing is that the Freud would say the superego is the part that will take the orders and will be more likely to hold you back too, because it may be the part that says, okay, I don't want to be too uppity. I don't want to strive to be rich or famous or something, because, and you don't know the because, but ultimately it's because mom told you when you were young that you can't do it and limited you, or the superego is the part that will tell you, you know what, I can't go out there and run or bike ride and get myself in shape because, fill in the blank for what the because is. Superego. So those depictions in cartoons show the angel as the superego and the id as the devil. I suppose in that sense, the angel's the one making you do bad things when you consider it in that context. Now, on that note, let's shift a little bit to Jung. Now, Jung didn't say the id, in reference to the all those naughty things was actually all that naughty. In fact, he said the shadow was like the id, but the only way that you could ever deal with the darkness of your soul is to embrace it. Recognize what it is, and then go from there. And if you do that, you'll be a far more creative person. You'll be able to use the energy without it dominating you. So in kind of an irony, Jung would say, unlike Freud, this shadow energy is not evil. It just is. I mean, you never call a lion that would eat a calf of a wildebeest evil because it ate a wildebeest. It just had to eat. It had to have food. So, it chased down this animal and ate it. There's nothing evil about it. It just is. It's part of what it is. And that's how Jung saw these energies. Now, of course, he felt that there was such thing as good and evil when it came to how you use those energies. Okay? But he believed that you had to be aware of it, or it might actually dominate you. If you're not aware of something, it's like when you're not aware of a disease in your body. Well, eventually it takes over and probably kills you. If you're aware of it, you can take measures to counter it, live with it, or whatever, but you got to know what's there first. Okay? If you're losing weight and you don't know you have a parasite, well, then things are not going to be so good for you if the parasite continues to live in your digestive tract. You've got to find a way to get rid of it in that sense. But in his sense, he would say that it's more of an energy that, yes, in society it has to be channeled, but it has to be understood first. Okay? Now, if we look at it from his standpoint when it comes to doubt and guilt, he would encourage people maybe not to feel so guilty for, like, if a person is walking down the street and they see a good-looking member of the opposite sex or something and start getting feelings, they shouldn't feel guilt for the feelings. They should just recognize that this is how the human's biology and psychology works. And if they realize that, they can kind of go, okay, well, unless I'm married to that person, maybe I should just walk on, or maybe I want to meet them and see if a relationship can be created. Okay? Rather than, oh my gosh, why can't I control my body? Why can't I control these urges? Why can't I do this and this and this? And we all know where that leads people. Okay? Then those are the people you do read about in the newspaper being sent to jail for all kinds of horrific things. So when we want to actually develop ourselves and to get past the guilt and self-doubt, I would say the first step you have to do is just recognize where guilt comes from. It's not rational. It really isn't. Now, again, I said I'd come back to this. I'm not saying that you have to become a psychopath. I don't think you can become a psychopath personally. I think you have to be born that way, or at least born with the capabilities of being a psychopath. You can repress things, but eventually they're going to come out, and you're going to feel the guilt. So yes, maybe you do something like in a war situation, and at that very moment when you're ramming the bayonet through the enemy soldier or prisoner, you're not feeling anything. Everything's just, happening so fast. But believe me, when you stop, when you get to safety, when maybe you're no longer a soldier, you're going to have nightmares about this. You're going to feel bad about it. You're going to feel guilt. Okay? And that's a good thing ultimately. But what we should keep in mind is that guilt itself is something that if we recognize where it comes from, then we can kind of counter it. And also to realize that guilt and self-doubt come from the same source. They're like branches on the same tree. Okay? So when you recognize these things, then you have to kind of reprogram yourself. So yes, you had all this programming that this is what people do that's good and bad and so forth. This should be your expectations in life. This is where you should limit yourself. That has to be reprogrammed. And you have to get a different focus. And once you get that different focus, Jung and Freud would both agree with this. Once you get that different focus, then you can work on reinforcing that. So again, like training a dog, sometimes maybe if it's had bad training, okay, then you can counter that. It takes a little longer if it's an adult dog. It's a little bit harder, but you can still retrain faulty programming. And this is something, in humans it's easier because we can rationally look at it. Dogs are still more instinct. Good and bad, actually. I mean, a lot of the people that own dogs, where the dog is just completely devoted to them, maybe the owner doesn't really deserve that kind of devotion, but the dog will give it anyway. It will love you, and so forth. Yes, the parts of its brain that are activated when it sees its owner are the same as when, you see maybe your parent or something in a human. So yes, they do have empathy and they do have a connection. But you do, if you want to get ahead in life, again, the psychopaths, how they seem to do quite well in getting ahead because they don't have guilt. And of course, they have a higher estimation of what they can accomplish. They believe in themselves more. That's something you can learn from them. Again, don't become one, but you can learn genetically. You can, like I said before, you have to kind of be born one to be one, but you can learn from some of the things that they, it comes to them naturally. And I don't even know if it comes to them naturally. Obviously, they have to learn how to manipulate a situation or to be friends with everyone and to win elections and to get appointed to Supreme Courts and stuff like that. Now, first of all, in the reprogramming, you have to give yourself goals that you can reach. I'm not, most of the time when you're trying to lose weight, for instance, the person sets this goal like, well, I want to look this way. And then it's going to take a long time to look that way. Instead, if they say, well, I'd like to lose 1 pant size, that's not hard to do. And if they reward themselves, like, I did it, maybe this is something I can accomplish. And they continue to reinforce that, then they can have success. If all they do is just starve themselves and they don't change that mindset, yeah, sure, they'll lose the weight, but then they'll gain it right back. They might even feel insecure for the fact that they don't look like they used to. And they're used to a certain way of interacting with the world. Okay, that has to change. You have to dispose of that. The other thing, like I said, is to recognize where it comes from. The Freudian idea of bring the problem out into the sunlight and like a vampire, it'll burn up and go away. You gotta know. So if you're having problems in areas of your life that are holding you back, if you can at least get a certain sense of where it came from in your family background, and then change that. It's difficult, but you have to recognize it. Once you recognize it, that maybe, I remember one thing. I've gotten past this, but I used to, when I was a kid, my parents would go shopping on Saturdays. No other day would they go grocery shopping, only on Saturdays. And they'd come home, and if you remember back in the 70s when they had potato chips that would come like 2 wrapped packages in a box. And I remember that if I did not eat, if I left over anything and didn't eat all of it in one of those packages, my dad would finish it off. And so it was sort of this like, well, if I don't eat it, I'm going to lose it. And it took forever for me to get to the point where I could just say, you know what, I'm just going to stop here. And this is years after that. Because there was kind of this subconscious desire to finish the bag. What I started doing was, even if there was only a handful left in the bag, I would wrap it up and put it away. Now that went against what I wanted to do because I was going, there's only a handful left, I might as well just eat them. But I had to train myself not to do that. And once I was used to putting it away, then that became a habit. Okay, well, here's the bag of potato chips. When I eat it, I know there's going to be leftover, and I'll store it over there. And and eventually it got to the point where I could just have a few sometimes. Just, okay, here's a few. Okay, I'll put those away. And later, I'm kind of hungry again. Go over there, pick a few out, close it up, put it back. And so Chips could last for, instead of in terms of minutes, they could last for maybe days. And so I had to understand, though, where did this notion of having to finish the bag come from? Well, it came from when I was a little kid, and I had to finish it, or else I would lose it. So if you don't use it, you lose it, would go through my mind. And I think a lot of that goes into us. I remember, I was sick and tired of getting low grades in PE, and my physical education grade would pull down the rest of my grades in school. There was a few times I could have made honor society, but my grades were just barely too low, and it was because of physical education. It really irritated me. But one year I decided, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get myself in shape. So one summer, I just really went at it. And I forgot all of that stuff about people saying, oh, you just can't do it. Or my mom, who did say many, many times, well, you're just not meant to be one of those kinds of people that are in shape. Well, I put that away, and I just, ignored it. And that year, when I went to ninth grade, I broke I came within like 5 push-ups of breaking the school push-up record. I broke the pull-up record. I couldn't do any pull-ups in 8th grade, but I broke the record. I think it was like, was it 23 or 24? I don't know. In 9th grade. And the teachers were begging me to go out for track. Okay, so, and that changed my attitude on who I was. Because now I was all of a sudden in a new group of people. All of a sudden, the popular type people were like, wanting to talk to me and hang out with me. And so this just kind of went on, and again, it affects me to this day. These are things people have to do, and also realize that it's never too late. Okay, so I got myself in shape when I was 15, and so forth. But how does that affect someone that's in their 30s, 40s, or 50s? Well, obviously, you can change who you are. All right? I've seen this in families where there's maybe everyone in the family is overweight, but there's one kid that's really rebellious. They don't like to listen to mom and dad. In fact, they may even reject the family religion or something like that. Join a new religion or none at all. I've noticed something interesting about them. When they do that, I've often noticed they're the ones who, if they come from a family that's overweight, they are the ones who wind up being in shape. Because not only did they reject these aspects of their family, but they also tried to make themselves different in other areas. Okay? So I don't know it's anecdotal evidence, but still, it is this idea that sometimes when you go against your culture, even though the culture itself was not what was bad overall, it was just one aspect, maybe the beliefs that your family had. Well, I don't know if there's any religion out there or something that says you should strive not to achieve, or you should strive to be in bad shape, or you should strive, I don't know if there's any out there. But there could still be part of it. It could be these women who are all skinny and showing off in their bikinis. That could be what your mom said to you when you were young. So you had this kind of idea that, you associated looking good, being thin or in shape, with dressing immodestly. And so therefore, it became something like, well, I'm not going to show off. I don't want to show off my body. I have known actually more than one woman who, because when they were young, when they went through puberty and suddenly they had these huge breasts, guys would make comments about them, and they actually would either gain weight or they would wear coats. When they go to high school, they'd be wearing a coat and it was warm outside. They just didn't want anyone to see their body because they didn't want all the attention to be on their breast, and you can't blame them. But the thing is, they were made to feel guilty for something that they were born with, which again, that's wrong. But it was something that actually gave, some of them eating problems. So ultimately, when it comes to these kinds of things, be it financial success, educational success, be it attaining goals, when it comes to life in general, anything, any single thing, even if it's like you've been told all your life, well, you're not good at building something, you just don't have that fix it sort of touch to you. How do they know? Maybe you do, and maybe with a little practice you'll get better. You might not be one of these people on these fake shows on TV where it's like, yeah, I'm going to go build a house right now. I say fake because you never really know how much they really do. Okay, because it's all little snippets here and there and whatever. Same with cooking shows, things, all these things. You just don't know how much of that is real. It might be as real as reality TV in general, but it still makes us feel guilty. We put away our creativity thing. I can't be this great artist, so I'm just not going to draw. I can't make things as good as my sister can, so I'm not going to make things. I can't do this because, and you compare yourself to other people. You got to get past that. Okay, if you want to achieve things, stop comparing yourself. All right, that's even an extension of what Freud talked about in regards to the ego's interaction with the id and the superego. You're just throwing a lot more people into the whole mess. So ultimately, I know it sounds counterintuitive that you're saying that, because we often think of it being the good part of us. If we look at it in that kind of context, the good part of us should be striving to make us better. But as Jung said, actually, sometimes you have to connect to the shadow in order to make yourself better. And as Freud's work would illustrate, often what happens to us is we start doubting ourselves based on what we've been taught. And just because you're taught something doesn't mean it's right. Okay? So try to get past that. Try to do things that you traditionally just felt like, I don't know, other people are better at than I am. Why? Ask yourself why. Why do you believe that? And I personally think the more TV you watch, the less you believe in yourself, because all you see is, oh, look at that beautiful dinner that she made in 30 minutes. Isn't it interesting that on a lot of commercials and TV, all these stuff with food, that you don't see steam coming up from the food? You know why? Because that would really affect the cameras, because you'd have all this steam flying around. So is that food really real? Think about that. Ask yourself that. Is it real, what you see in a commercial? Is it real when you see someone, well, there's an old house there, I'm just go, take me a day and I'll make it look great. Well, maybe when the camera's not rolling, they've got about 6 or 7 carpenters working on that thing to make it look good. But it still gives you this idea of, oh my gosh, I could never do that. Look how beautiful it looks now. Get past the TV. Throw the thing away if you have to. You'll be healthier and you'll probably try new things. And reach a higher potential than what you would normally. Again, the society sometimes takes that role of your mom when you were 3, telling you what you can and can't do, what you're good or not good at, and so forth. So sometimes, you gotta remember though, your mom loved you. Society doesn't care at all about you. So at least she has an excuse. Society is just trying to manipulate you. Okay? They're playing mind games with you. Time maybe to shut the mind games off and try to see, look at yourself and think, what am I capable of?